Today we are doing our review for Sunset Overdrive. See, this is one of the highly anticipated new IPs for the Xbox One. It is exclusive to the Xbox, and there's been almost nothing like it out before. However, when I play it, it does feel like some sort of bizarre love child of, say, Dead Rising, Prototype, and Lollipop Chainsaw. Let me explain why this is. First, with Dead Rising, the first thing that comes to my mind is not only the zombies, which this is very much a pseudo-zombie-ish game, but also the weapons. So this game has a lot of outlandish weapons, but the one thing they're missing, which Dead Rising did properly, is to give you some sort of item creation system. Now, Sunset Overdrive has about 20 different weapons for you to choose from, which you have to buy as you go through the game, and a couple of them are awarded based on quests and things like that, but I think an item creation system would be fantastic. The reason I liken it so much to Prototype is the quick and interesting types of movement throughout the game. As you go through, you're grinding on rails and bouncing off of things primarily. You can shunt yourself forward in mid-air, but that's not until a little later in the game. It can be a little bit frustrating because there are different types of movement, but they're not all available at the beginning of the game. And you're not really earning them, they just happen at certain points in the story. So, like, the shunting forward doesn't happen until at least halfway into the game, and that actually really opens up the movement in the game, so before that it's actually really frustrating. However, there is one movement that I really kind of bothers me, is that you can you can jump at the side of a wall, and then when you hit the wall you can start running along the side of the wall. But they allow that, but you can't run straight up the wall. I mean, you can literally circle a building infinitely, but you can't go up the side of the wall to get to the roof. Now, I can understand why they would do that, because it would kind of eliminate some of the purpose of their movements, the grinding and the bouncing. But at the same time, it's kind of frustrating that they would allow such a similar thing, but not use common sense like so many other games have done that. And then the reason I liken it to Lollipop Chainsaw is because of the ridiculous story and the comedy and things like that that are going on in the game. The game loves to break the fourth wall, but not in that way where the game actually starts talking to you, like say in the Deadpool game when Deadpool would talk to the person holding the controller. It never actually does that, it just very openly acknowledges the fact that you exist and that this is totally a video game, which makes it fairly interesting. I mean, it's entertaining to see them use all of these tropes and acknowledge how ridiculously dumb it can be, but yet they just keep plugging forward, which is kind of neat. Another cool aspect of the game is the amount of customization. So when you very first start, for the first few minutes, you're stuck as this character that we've all seen in the commercials, which actually I'm pretty happy with. I kept my character like that. But after you get through the opening sequence, you are then allowed to customize and create your own character. You can make him male, or you can make it female. You have two options of body types, and from there you can customize his head, his hair, and all these things. It actually, for a game like this, is surprisingly intricate. And then beyond that, you have a wide variety of costumes and outfits and clothing pieces that you can purchase and equip, or you get them through quests. There's an achievement for getting over 250 items, and I never quite got there. I got about 2/3 of the way through, but that gives you a basic idea of the type of customization that you can have. So, again, for a game that I feel is fairly simplistic, that's a pretty expansive thing to do. And the one thing I really do like about that is once you change your character physically, or his clothes or her clothes, that it shows up like that in the cutscenes. There are games that don't do that, and it really pisses me off, and this game did it, and I thought that was awesome. There are a wide variety of collectibles for you to get. They do almost all have purposes. There are smartphones all around the city, which give you little tidbits of the story. There are other kind of stupid things like smelly shoes and toilet paper and balloons. And if you collect those, you can actually use them as currency to create what they call amps. Now, the amps are these power-ups that help make you cool, and so you can do different and interesting things. They all seem to focus in a very similar manner, either augmenting your basic abilities in simple ways. Now, you have different levels and varieties of amps, and you don't gain access to them all at the same time. What you have to do is you build up your style meter. Now, this is kind of where I got lost. I mean, I understand the system, but I wasn't good enough at it to always have a lot of style. So you can have between, I believe, 0 and 4 points of style, and there's this little lightning bolt meter at the top of the screen, and as you're doing cool stuff, bouncing off of cars and grinding on rails and killing guys while in mid-air, that meter slowly goes up, and as you get points on that meter, you gain access to your amps in the middle of combat. So it does behoove you to have as much style as possible, because the highest level amps are the ones that you only have access to when you have a lot of style. So it's kind of an interesting system that kind of forces you and pushes you in the direction of their new movement style, but at the same time I found it a little bit frustrating at times because I wasn't always good at the movement. I mean, I could do passably. I could always keep around 2 or 3 points of style, but maxing it out was near impossible for me. The story for the game is, obviously, it's ridiculous. There's this new energy drink out on the market. When people drink it, they turn into monsters. So it's not really zombies, but it's close enough. I mean, when you shoot them and kill them, they tend to explode, and it's really gross. And you have a wide variety of monsters, and all of this is coming from this evil corporation known as Fizco. And after this happened, they somehow locked down the city. I mean, there's like a virtual wall that you can't see. It's almost like this invisible digital wall that you can physically hit, but you can't see it there. The problem is that they don't get too much into the actual story. You're kind of left wanting. The only way to get much of the story is to get the smartphones, which give you little tidbits here and there, but not a lot. And then there's also the side quest in which you're trying to get information to try and take down Fizco, which ends up ending in a very unsatisfying manner. It has this great build-up, and then it just kicks you in the nuts and tells you, nope, you don't get what you want. And it's almost as bad when you get to the end of the game, because the end of the game, you find out that there's a self-destruct in the Fizco building that's going to destroy the city, and you have to take it down. Okay, well, all that does is keep them from destroying the city. You still have not found a way out. You are not safe. You haven't fixed everyone or everything. There isn't a substantial ending to this, but at the same time, if there isn't a proper ending, it leaves it open for a sequel, which I think that there's a lot of potential for a sequel for this game, and that they have set some very good groundwork and foundation with this first, and from here they can grow and make it much more interesting and impressive. One additional thing I have to say that most people probably seen in some of the commercials or whatnot is that the respawn animation is really cool. There is a variety of 18 different respawn animations that vary from teleporting in to arriving in a rocket ship or being thrown out of a van. It's meant to be humorous, and it's meant to not be taken seriously, and it does add some amusing depth to the game to see what kind of thing they're going to do next, and it almost makes it really fun to die, to be honest. Not just that, but they make it really useful that if you are doing a quest, for instance, that, say, makes you have to climb to the top of a building. This is one reason also I know that they didn't make it so that you could run up the side of a building, but they make it so you have to traverse up by grinding and bouncing and all these things, and if you get high enough up, if you fall off, you get teleported back to where you were so you don't have to start over, and I think that that's fantastic because we've all had that happen, and it pisses me off to no avail. There are a couple of things that I would like to see improved, such as there is no day-night cycle. Certain quests take place at night, and those are more or less a tower defense type of thing in which to create the amps that I mentioned earlier, you have to have one of your friends, Floyd, create them, you know, with the shoes and the toilet paper and stuff, and he uses these vats. These vats also end up using overcharge, which is that drink, and the problem with the drink is that it then draws all of the monsters to you, and so you have to defend the vats while they're cooking. So, like I said, it's a tower defense thing. You get traps, you can place them around the perimeter to try and keep the bad guys out, and this is the only time you can use the traps, which is also very disappointing because they can be so cool, but it doesn't allow you to use them any other time, and so I think that's a really big missed opportunity right there. They have a weapon leveling system, but it's extraordinarily simple. You kill so many guys, you get XP, your weapon becomes better. You don't really get any really hard and fast stats about how good your weapon is. You get a bar, it's like, this is how much damage it has, blah blah blah, and it goes up a tiny bit when you level it. And any weapon can go from level 1 to 5, and like I said, there's only 20 weapons, and as I was playing, I found like 4 that I like to use all the time, so that's all I did. I think I would prefer, instead of them having a weapon leveling system, to have a personal leveling system where your character can level based on getting XP, and then you can customize him. I mean, they kind of took that out of the picture by giving you amps and having your weapon itself level, and they also have what is called overdrives, which they're just added things that you can equip to yourself as you kill guys, or you do certain things all the time, like bouncing all over the place or grinding. You get badges, and you can spend these badges to buy overdrives, and the overdrives might give you a plus 5% damage to OD, you know, the monsters, or to whatever faction, or you might get a little bit more health, or you might generate style faster if you grind. So I like all of these systems, but I also want a personal system so that your character evolves, not just his stuff. And that leads into my other thing, is I would love also a gear system. I mean, be able to customize your guy rather than being forced to do these certain things. Like, I'm not really into their type of movement. What if I could customize my character in another way to make it better at the things that I like or that I'm better at? Or to make me better at the things that I'm not good at? The characters in the game are pretty interesting, and they can be a lot of fun. Some of them actually have some backstory, which is surprising in a ridiculous game like this, but it is. I'm sad to say that following the quest lines, I end up coming to the groups of people that I find most interesting at the very end of the game, so I don't get to interact with them as much, because there's this group of LARPers who have gone crazy, and they really think they're in some sort of ancient medieval setting, as well as there's these really hot Mexican cheerleader types who have like the skulls painted on their faces. I would like to see them more, mostly because, well, they're really hot, and so I didn't want to have to wait till the last hour of the game to see them. The quests themselves are really repetitive. They're very similar. They're frequently fetch missions, or, like I said, defense quests. Go over there and pick this up for me and then come back. Or go and get this thing. Well, oh, it's not working, so now you have to stand here and wait for it to work. And while you're doing that, you get attacked by a bunch of monsters. Okay. But I will say that all of the side quests are interesting. I was fascinated by all of them. You meet interesting people, you get interesting stories. At one point, I interacted with a pirate on a beached pirate ship. Yes, this makes no sense. Why would there be a pirate here? Why would any of this be happening? But you make friends with him, and you have to help him protect his ship and set up some cannons on his ship. And when you succeed at the end, you get some gear. You get a coat that's a pirate coat, so you can equip that, and that's really cool. There's another quest where you meet up with this comic book geek, and so he asks you to start getting comic books that he lent to friends around the city who've turned into OD, and you have to pick up the comic book and bring them back. That's a repetitive quest you have to do 3 times, and by the end of the 3rd one, he's starting to think of you as this fantastic superhero who can save comic books. And throughout that last quest, he's telling you the story that he's going to create for the comic book that he's going to make based around you. And that story is interesting. I mean, all of these little things actually come together really well and really ridiculously, and it makes it really entertaining. And really, because I like that word. Only other thing I can say is the difficulty of the game overall is pretty low. Most of the time it's not very challenging, and the couple of times that it got challenging, it was really challenging. I would die multiple times. There's actually one quest that I never finished because it was a side quest and it wasn't worth all the extra effort. I wasn't going to get an achievement, I wasn't going to further the story, and actually the quest itself, the information I got from it was very frustrating and made me unhappy, which was the story about, you know, trying to take down Fizco and the end of it, and it pissed me off. I was like, it was so unfulfilling that I'm like, screw this, I don't need to do it. But I think there's definite potential for a sequel in the future. There's a couple of improvements they can make, there's a couple of add-ons I would like to see. But overall, I thought it was a really good, solid game. It took me around 15 hours to finish. It has a great little clock in the pause menu, and it does not run the clock while you're paused, which is nice, so you know exactly how much time you spent playing in-game, and that's where I was at. It's right around 15. And that was doing all the side quests, but not doing any of the collectibles. There's about 850 collectibles, give or take, and I maybe got around 100 or more. And that was just because I was running around town, I'd see it, so I'd grab it. I wasn't seeking them out at all. So, yeah. I would say if you've got an Xbox One, it's worth a shot and worth some play. It does have multiplayer, which I didn't try. It's not my bag, really, to be doing multiplayer online. But even as great as the game is, there's still not a whole lot to it. There's not a tremendous amount of depth, but it was entertaining. I was pushed to finish it within the first week of owning it, with my very limited schedule, so that has to count for something, right? So I think that I give this game 3.5 outrageously awesome respawns out of 5.